everybody. Welcome to Man Alone Networks on YouTube.com. I am your host, Man Alone. Man Alone Networks, the only 24-hour solo RPG news station. If there's breaking news in the solo RPG world, it's going to be here first. We're going to scoop it. Now, admittedly, there has not been any breaking news in solo RPGs since Lonnie Anderson developed the D6 Oracle in 1981. But should there be anything else, you can bet your beans that I'll be here at the desk reporting it. We will be prepared for anything. And really, that is the theme of today's show, which is preparation. And specifically, we're talking about a certain kind of preparation, doomsday prepping. That's right. If you have some extra space in your backyard and you're thinking, I wonder if I could fit a bunker underneath the lawn here and fill it up with soup. Well, we're not going to talk about that today, but we will talk about prepping for solo RPGs. And we'll use a little bit of the Walking Dead universe by Free League, my current infatuation, to talk about that process. The video is going to go like so. First, I'm going to talk generally how I prepare for a solo RPG session. And I'll try to go beyond the get a pencil. I'll try to go a little deeper than that. But you will need a pencil. And then we'll go over generally how I do it, and then like the considerations I made for Walking Dead, so that you can kind of like see that process a little bit in action, specifically one part of the process, which is evaluating the material and the appropriateness or modification for solo play. But I don't want to jump the gun. Because, we're here together. Our time together is sometimes limited. And maybe you want to increase the time that we have together. And if that's so, you should join the several thousand who have already signed up for the Man Alone members only, Man Alone featuring others secret members only podcast. We've already released episode 1. It's an hour long. It's a real banger. You're gonna love it. I'm on there. BB's on there. It's already gotten really great reviews, and honest to goodness, I think it's a damn good episode. So yes. Despite the fact that there are potentially thousands at the gates, just so you know, there are first 50 people to sign up will get a reduced rate of $3 per month for the rest of your life, or mine. It'd probably be even a little longer than my life, because I imagine I don't have a kill switch on my heart that if my heart goes out, these memberships will turn off. So if I go down, in all likelihood, the page, you'll still be able to get this great deal for another month or two until you're finally where's Man Alone? And then BB logs on and says, hey, just so you know, something terrible has happened. A crane, not the animal, the machine, fell on Man Alone. But we don't need to think too much about that. The point is, for everyone else, for the plebes, it's going to be $4 a month, but if you get in now, not only could you get this excellent $3 a month deal, but you can also get a pay for it yearly for $29 for the whole year. Normally, the podcast is $4 a month, and it's $39 for the year. And so I don't know if the yearly one will renew at that rate, but I assume the $3 per year one will continue ad infinitum unless you cancel your membership, which I want to say this. This is definitely not good business here, but for having followed people's Patreons and many podcasts, such things throughout the years, sign up. It's $3 a month. I tried to make it affordable for the first 3. If you don't get in on time, there's half the spots are left. So there's about 25 spots left. So if you're seeing this right now and you're interested in it, I would go over to buymeacoffee.com/manalone. You're not only going to get the secret podcast, you're also going to get the audio version of all of these videos. Once I figure out how to do that, I'm going to try to do that with this video. And then you'll also get access to any posts I put over there. If I do any hangout events or anything like that, I don't know. I'll think of some fun, cool stuff down the line. But right now, basically, you're getting access to the weekly podcast as well as the audio version of the videos, especially helpful if you're somebody that likes to listen to these like a podcast. So run, don't walk. Make sure you get the early worm level so you could be a worm. And yeah, I think that about covers it. If you have listened to the podcast already and you want to give any reviews down in the comments, go for it. But I'm going to work very hard to make it worth your money. But the thing I wanted to say that's not good business, if at some point you're like, I can't swing it this month, I'm too poor. And I know it's like weird to say I'm too poor, I can't give someone $3, but it's like, I've been in a place where you're really hurting for money and you need to like cancel everything. You need to cancel your Netflix. You should cancel that probably anyways, but you need to cancel all these extra memberships. If you need to cancel, all I want to say, I don't know if you could become an early worm member anymore. So I don't want to threaten that. It's just logistically, but like what I want to say is if that happens, just go ahead and do that. Don't worry about me seeing it and being like, oh, how could they do that to me? Because what I find happens sometimes is like people will be supporters, they'll participate in things, and then they won't be able to do the, subscription membership thing. And then they kind of say, oh, well, I'm going to run away in shame or whatever. And like, please don't do that. I totally understand if you can't swing it. I will not look at that and be like, why? What did I do wrong? I'll just be like, yep, okay, things happen. That being said, I hope to create a product that is worth your time. And it's funny to call it a product. It sounds like I'm selling, 2% milk or something. Another thing that I wanted to talk about actually was, before we get into things, I did a post about this, but it's incumbent on me to mention this some more just because I have enjoyed it so much. I did a post a few days back about the Hexplorer's Guide to by Druidic Habit, and I got a printer recently, and so I've become really excited because it's not that I didn't have a printer before, it's just that I had this awful printer that I feel like I've had forever. And it was getting to the point that like when I printed things, it would sometimes just do like streaks or like print things as if it was dot matrix or invert the colors. And so I had like a Pavlovian response to anything that might have required me to print something. And I just suddenly realized how trapped I felt by that and finally sprung for a new printer. And so since then, I have been trying to print out, find stuff that I enjoy to print it out, and specifically snacks. And what I mean by that is when you're playing a game like this or something that is specific to solo gaming, like Across 1,000 Dead Worlds, parentheses, should have been nominated for way more Ennies than it was, but I digress. If you're playing something like that, you really need to sit, you need to prep, it's a meal. But sometimes you just want a snack. And I wanted to mention this, and Druidic Habit sent me something that I could preview it with a little bit, because what's cool about this is this Hexplorer's Guide to is a zine. I didn't realize this at first, but like Volume 1, June 2024, I think today or yesterday, Druidic Habit released the July one. And so it's only on its second one right now, right? The new one is the Gloaming STS. So what's cool about this is it's like, I don't know, like 13 pages. And the idea with it is like each month you're getting like one section of this gigantic hex map. And so this one is the Veiled Peaks, and then volume 2, or I guess volume 1 issue 2, is these Gloaming steps, and it's going to be like related to that. So you'll be able to take stuff from this one and apply it to that. They'll be interconnected. And the reason I don't open this up and just go to town on it is two reasons. Number one, my printing has improved exponentially. My cutting it has degraded to almost like preschool level. This is the most embarrassing attempt at making like a booklet that I've ever done. Two of the pages, you can't open them unless you actually like fold the booklet. Like I would have to rip the pages to show you, but that's okay, because one of the reasons I wouldn't want to show too much anyways is after this great section on how to use the booklet, how to do, hex crawls. And if you're new to hex crawls, or you've been wanting to, or you really love hex crawls, this is great. This is a great way to get into it. But beyond that, each different area or each different hex has like secrets in it. So in addition to there being, this like generative stuff, like these really cool little tables here, there is also, I think I have this here. Yeah. So this is very like Watergate type redacted version of this. But the reason he sent me this is because, you can see on the left, you got awesome tables. You have like every place that you go, you have different little decision points, dice rolls, but there's also these secrets that get revealed depending on your decisions. And I really, really like that. It's something that I've been doing in the Dragonbane solo that I've been creating is like, in addition to this generative content where you can kind of make it your own, it also has these like set pieces. It's kind of like a Fish concert. I'm not a Fish fan, but I got, like many people, you have the one friend who's really big Fish head, and I got, we'll say, invited to a concert or dragged there for a 2-day concert, and they have like some songs where they're just jamming, and then some songs which are set, like Farmhouse, and they play that song the same way each time. So there is both jam sessions here and sets. So it's on itch.io. I thought I would give a little bit. It's druidichabit.itch.io. Miraculously, he has it at name your own price right now. I really think this thing is worth it. I think this is something I would buy for at least a few bucks. And so, if this sounds like something you're interested in, and especially if you're new to the space, I think this would be a really good place to start. Go ahead and grab it. He told me he's not really too interested in the money right now. Just wants people to check it out. But if you can, throw him a couple bucks for it, because for nothing else than to make sure that he keeps making it, because I think it's a really cool concept. And I actually probably could use Druidic Habit's help with finishing up my Dragonbane supplement, because I have totally burned out on sort of like doing these little puzzles and choices and decision trees in each section. So Druidic Habit, you might be put to work very soon. Let's talk if you're seeing this. Okay. I think the last, I guess, oh no, I got two more things. I also wanted to mention, this was something I got sent a few weeks ago, and I've been meaning to mention it. I have no idea why my computer defaulted to what I think is the Vietnamese app store. I'm not sure, but doesn't matter. The pictures is basically what I wanted to show here. So this is Mork Folio, and it is a really simple app that I've used. It has a really cool interface. You can kind of see it in the left here. If you're playing Mörk Borg, you just click this tombstone for a random monster, this one for a random encounter, and then you can browse the monsters, and there's a couple like audioscapes, like nighttime or like rain, and that's it. But there's a good selection. If you see on the right, this is kind of like what the monsters look like. And I wanted to share this because this is going to come up in the video today. I think this hits just the right note in what a lot of soloists, myself included, are looking for when we're looking for just enough technology to be helpful, but not stepping over that line where you're asking yourself, why am I even doing this? I want to get away from a screen. I want to not be, engaged in this sort of thing. I want to, have this creative process. I think this is a tool that is like Man Alone approved for that. So it's called Mork Folio. It's on the App Store. It might be on Google Play. If you're the person that sent this to me, I know it's from Zany Gadget. Let the people know how else they can get it. But yeah, Man Alone approved. Dragonbane Path of Glory came out. We got the beta PDF. I don't want to show too much of it just because it is an adventure that can be run by a GM. So if anyone is playing, I don't want to do any spoilers. But of interest up front is a new map that is like somewhere a few days from Misty Vale. And actually, this sort of, if I'm getting this right, this is sort of zoomed in on an area of the southeast of the Misty Vale map. And this is like where I located my solo adventure, which is kind of weird. There's also a few new demonology spells in here. Here's something that you might, I don't know if, no spoilers. But anyways, I'll take a look at this and see if there's any way that I can share it without spoiling it. It looks really cool. There are 3 adventures in here, actually. The Dead Forest, the Gates of Power, and the Heart of Darkness. So we'll check that out. I'm sure there's going to be lots of videos on that. And finally, I just wanted to give big shouts out to everybody who purchased my PDF of Year 0 plus 1. I won the best medal so far. I've got a copper bestseller. Copper, that's the best. It goes bronze, silver, gold, diamond, platinum, copper. The only thing that beats copper is adamantium, which is the name of the normal membership level for those who join after the first 50 subscribers. So it actually goes copper, adamantium, worm. Worm is the most powerful metal. Okay, I'm losing it here. No, but seriously, thank you so much to everyone who purchased this. I hope that it has been useful. Whoever gave me a rating and a review, Jonathan King, thank you. If anyone wants to drop me a review, that would be awesome, but not necessary. Let's be real about it. But yeah, that's I'm at Man Alone on DriveThruRPG. It's under Year 0 plus 1. It's $3. It's one hell of a ride. Okay. All right. So the only thing I want to think about. Okay, we'll maybe talk about reference something in this later. So. Okay, time check. 18 minutes, not so bad. All right, so one of the things that I've been wanting to talk about is what is the process for actually setting up and playing a solo RPG? And I think about this video a lot. I thought about it again today. Because I attempted to make this video 2 nights ago and was a little way through it. And then I mentioned my Buy Me a Coffee, new podcast subscription. And to be clever, I was like, oh, look at all these people who joined. And I wrote a comment like, oh, thank you so much. Or, I did some silly little joke. And then I said, I actually wrote this comment while filming the video. LOL. And so that comment is there. It's evergreen. This is extremely embarrassing. But then I realized I just stopped filming and had to cut the feed because I was in my shell. And so it was showing everyone's name or not everyone's name, whatever name you put into, it's not like I have your social security number or anything or your credit card, but it was showing the subscribers' names. And I was like, oh my God, I can't show all these, what a betrayal for the first video that I'm announcing this podcast if I just show everyone's name on video. So I was like, okay, maybe I can go and edit it out. Not my forte, but I was like scrolling around, so I would have had to like have a little black box over everyone's name that like moved. It was terrible. So this is actually my second go, but this is good because the first one sucked. It was completely disorganized. Okay, so I I was in a bookstore today and I saw these books that are always there's always a dedicated section to them, which is like the ABC guide to writing a novel, or like how to get your characters to work, um, how to set the scene, and like I don't want to crap on them too much. I think Stephen King, even though as a person he's begun to annoy me to no end, his book on writing is one of the best books I've read on that. Chuck Palahniuk has one as well. That said, whenever I look at these books, I always make the same joke that I made to BB while we were there today. I said, uh, getting these books on how to write is like some of the best ways to prevent yourself from writing, because it's like that thing of, well, I've got to keep preparing. I got to keep reading these books, and it's like you're reading these books, and then it's like, okay, when are we going to start writing? We got to just start writing. And I think built into that fear, this like preparation type of procrastination, right? Because there's a procrastination I have, which is like, I'll just keep playing Wasteland 3 on Xbox One, and I won't, do the work I have to do for my school or for, my job or whatever it is. And then there's the like over preparer procrastination. And I do feel that my sense is from people I've spoken to that this is a species of procrastination in terms of playing solo RPGs. And so my goal in talking about how to set up a game for this is not necessarily technical. It is a little bit technical, but it's more focused on getting over that threshold from like not playing to playing. Okay. And actually, the first thing that I want to say is is please stop referring to things as session 0 or session 1 unless you are making a YouTube video on solo playing. Okay. Now, this is something that's a bit of a necessary crime in terms of solo role playing YouTube channels, is that we have to refer to it. Well, we don't have to, but we very often refer to it for clarity as like, oh, I'm playing, Dragonbane solo. This is session 0 in this video. And so what that indicates to viewers or would-be viewers is, in this session, I'm going to go over some things. I'm going to build characters. I'm going to like figure out a loadout. I'm going to do stats. And I might even like generate where I start, or if I have any NPCs in my party. And then come session 1, that's when I'll start playing. This is not really how it ever goes for me when I'm playing by myself. And I don't think that that's clarified enough. And I know that there are so many of you who, you're not even in the pre-contemplation or contemplation stage of like playing. You have done it all up to session 0. You've done a session 0. And then this like paralysis sets in because you're like, all right, here we go. And it almost feels like an assignment, which we don't want that feeling to happen. We want the feeling to be relaxing. We want the feeling to be creative, inspiring, interesting, curious, hilarious, fun. And so I think the first tip here in prepping is to absolve, disabuse yourself of the disenthrall. How about that? That's I think a word I learned from reading it off John Wilkes Booth Tombstone. You need to disenthrall yourself with this notion of session 0. Because the truth is that it is much more fluid between session 0, 1, and 2 in real life when you are solo playing. It is very fluid, right? So you're going to read the book. You might spend a couple days on that. You might not. You might jump into it, especially if it's a bit shorter. Just having some coffee. If it's a bit shorter, you can get it done pretty quickly. Like if you're playing like Outsiders or maybe soloing like Into the Odd or something like that. But yeah, you take a few days. You want to read it over, familiarize yourself, get used to the lore, and then you start like creating characters. You remind yourself of the rules. Maybe you do some of the other tips in this video, and then you start playing. And one of the reasons in which my play on YouTube differs from my solo play that I do actually alone is that so much of my sessions, especially early on, are me going through something and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what was that again? And I'm like, how do I handle critical injuries? And then basically, I can't really show you right here, but basically I'm just going like this. Oh, for about maybe 20, 30 minutes sometimes. I'm like reading about something and going, oh, that's cool. I could do that. And then like I build up like my understando-meter to the point where I go, okay, I'm ready to resume. All right. So halt that feeling that you have that once you finish session 0, you're at a starting line. And then after that starting line, you just got to go, because it's just not real. It's just not true. It doesn't work like that. You're going to go back to the source. This is one of the great things about solo play, right? When I'm GMing a group, I don't have that. No matter how patient my players are, there's always a sense of like, I have 5 people sitting here waiting for me while I'm looking up this rule. So I could take 20 minutes to look something up, but that is going to severely damage the flow of the game, right? But when you're solo playing, who cares? Take a look at it, read it, get a good sense of it, move on. All right. The second thing is, and this is something that we will probably, the second part of the video will be using this as an exemplar, is you want to review the book and start making solo considerations. Okay. So I'll tell you right now, some of the areas that are always going to require considerations for solo games. And by considerations, I mean, do I have to tweak anything? Now, this is primarily for games that are not designed to be soloed. Like, if a game is created as a solo game, that's going to be a lot easier because all of those considerations have already been made. But if it's a game like Walking Dead Universe that has a nice solo section in the back, but still it's a solo section, right? It's just a section. I mean, there's 150 pages on not solo, and then like, I don't know, what is it here? 54 to 164. So 10 pages on solo, and the other 150 or so are on not solo. And even that, we need to make sure that the way that we're setting this up is going to give us the best chance of having a challenging yet realistically challenging adventure, that we're going to be able to do the things that are recommended for play, right? So if you have anything that is a fundamental feature of the game that requires someone else in your party to do something, or an NPC and you don't have NPCs assigned, or if there's anything where it splits party members apart, or if there's any, fundamental role mechanics or something, you'll need to identify those and make adjustments for them. I'd say that the biggest areas are attributes or stats, skills, talents, how many of those you start with, okay? The threshold for failing, especially in combat, okay? Making sure that combat works, like that it functions with one person. So especially if it's like opposed roles, you'll have to figure out how to manage that, to make them more player facing. And then health and death, right, is going to be something that needs to be considered. Is the amount of health that my character normally starts with going to be something that it's going to be possible to play this game with that, or am I going to get aced really quickly in that? So health, armor, NPCs, starting loadout like items and gear. Will you need a little bit more? Will you need to add some NPCs as a companion? How will you manage those, etc.? Okay, the third thing is tables. one of the reasons I like this book is it has a lot of great tables in it. Weirdly, one of the things that a lot of people criticized on the Free League forums when this first came out, man, there is a weird takedown of this game in the Free League forums from like 18 months ago that I was like aghast at. There were people on that thread on the Free League forums being like, I want my money back. How can I get my money back? What a joke. And I know that, I'm not saying that this is the perfect RPG. I think it's just very good, well written, easy to play. But some of the things were like, it doesn't have enough lore. It's like, bro, you know what Walking Dead is, right? Like everyone alive has seen at least 14 seasons of it, right? Like, what kind of lore do you want? In addition, it's like, I don't know how much lore I want. Do I want to hear about Rick Grimes? Because then it sets up that expectation that like Rick is going to be in the game. And then the other thing was like, there are too many tables. And I was like, oh, what? Excuse me? There's too many tables? Oh, I'm sorry that's so helpful for you. And maybe I'm seeing it through the lens of a solo player that I just like, I eat tables for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But this is like one of the strongest things about this book is all of these tables, right? Look at this. NPC survivors. Not only are they tabled, they're rollable. Instructions on havens. All kinds of tables, right? And so what I used to do with that is make a GM screen for myself by photocopying. I even early on would photocopy, cut out the tables, and then like paste them on another sheet. One thing I want to recommend right now, this exact app is only going to be for people who have a Mac, but I'm certain there's got to be something comparable to this in PC and Linux. I don't know anything about Linux, but there's an app called Freeform, okay, on Mac. And it's one of these apps that like you may have seen it as you booted up your Mac for the first time. I think with anyone who has Sonoma, it's part of Sonoma. And it's just like very strange looking app where you open it and it's just, oh, I can open it. So it's just like a little, a grid of dots, and you can create shapes and arrows and flow charts and stuff like that. And so, most of the time people open it and be like, okay, cool. But what I found that it is amazing at is organizing. I can screenshot tables, and then I just drag tables into Freeform and I can move them around. So what I do is I go through the whole book, the PDF of it. I screenshot every table. Now, obviously, you'd have to have the PDF for this. I screenshot every table I'm going to need, and I just drag them to Freeform. And when I'm done, I took a picture of this to show you what it looked like once I was finished with Walking Dead. It looks like that, right? Which I kind of tried to make into a heart because I love you all. So you can see, this kind of, at this point, it looks like I'm solving a cold case, right? But over time, what I will then do is I will organize them into something that looks like this, something that is very usable for me. Now, if you could say, wow, that's very helpful if I was looking for tables for ants. But one of the cool things about Freeform is, I'll put these headings on there so I know like what I'm looking for. Okay, I'm looking for something in travel, and then I can just sort of like zoom in on travel, and Freeform is really good at maintaining the resolution of all of the screenshots. I have everything in one place. And what this prevents is me having to page through endless like that endless page through in the book, because a lot of times I'm just looking for a certain table and it's not in the place I think. So for instance, there's some tables in the back of the Walking Dead that are solo play related, and I put them in, they're like solo play combat. Well, I'm not necessarily going to think about that. My brain's not necessarily going to think solo play when I start combat. It's going to think combat. So I was able to drag those over to the different combat sections here. And there's different like combats in this game: swarms, brawls, duels. Over here, I also found a cheat sheet that somebody made on Reddit. So I just also dragged that in there. And I have myself a GM screen at the price of, I guess whatever the PDF costs, but since I already had the PDF at a price of 0. So that definitely is, again, if you could think of anything in Windows that would do the trick, maybe like MS Paint. I haven't used MS Paint since I was like 7, but I assume if it has evolved along in the same trajectory that other such programs have evolved, then you should be able to do this, or at least you'll be able to paint a nice banana or a pineapple or a peach. Okay. And so, yeah, whatever method you need to do to get the most important tables that you can at the quick and ready. The other thing you want at the quick and ready, and this you can honestly just write down on an index card, is your gameplay cycle. Okay. Have you ever seen the movie The Neverending Story? Atreyu, right? And then who's the guy who flies through the sky? Balthazar? No. He's the white dragon. No, not Eeyore. Come on. Well, oh man, I'm gonna be so embarrassed. I know this. I watched The Neverending Story like 100 times. Falcor, right? So Falcor. What the hell am I even talking about? Okay, so you want this cycle of play. Oh, okay. Here's what it was. In the Neverending Story, there's like the nothing, which is supposedly like imagination when books go away, and the nothing is taking over this Neverending Story, right? The nothing in terms of solo role playing is when you lose sight of the cycle, and you'll be just working along, and you'll be like, okay, so I went to this village, I bought a couple things, now I want to go out. Okay, yeah, I should stay at this inn. Okay, I stayed overnight, I recovered this much HP. Okay, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What the hell am I supposed to do next? How do you even play this game? And then you have that terrible vision in your head of your character like sitting on a horse being like, hey bro, like what do you want me to do next? And you're just stunned. And I think that is what a lot of people are kind of afraid of, is sort of silly to say. I don't think anyone's genuinely, teeth chattering, shaking in their boots afraid of that. But that's the concern about solo play, is creating this momentum and then kind of getting stuck or not knowing how to do it right or getting frustrated. So what you need to do is create a cycle for yourself so that at any point you can go back to that cycle and say, okay, here's what I'm doing. Now, this book is going to be a real buddy to you because the person who wrote this knows the struggle of solo play and actually created solo session structure. And to me, that's so important that I wrote that down and I have it in front of me when I'm soloing this game. Okay. So that I can look up, okay, I determine the time that's elapsed since my last session. Cool. Roll each clock on the challenge sheet. Great. Create a new rumor. Cool. Update projects. Decide on challenges. Run a scene. Embark on a run. Engage with a challenge. And then update your Haven and XP and then go back to 1. And within that cycle, you're going to have a lot of things come up. But ultimately, once you're done with that thing and you say to yourself, where am I? Rather than the invasion of the nothing coming in, you go, okay, yeah, I'm still on number 5. And then you continue. Okay. So that is, you organize your tables and then you create the cycle of it. And I think, especially when you first start, write that on an index card. Figure out that loop, that never-ending story of what it is to play this game. All right. The next thing is, and again, this game does a really good job. I don't know what that was. It just sounded. I'm going to pause this because I think somebody just slipped on ice outside. Wait, it's summertime. There can be no ice. Okay, good news. Nobody slipped on ice, but potentially someone slipped up in sobriety because I think one of my neighbors just took a tumble. It's not funny. Okay. Where was I? Right. So this game does a good job of spelling that out. not even in the solo section. I mean, it does revisit it in the solo section, but it also has these ideas in haven management, which is like a part of this game I really love and I think provides such a good anchor for the RPG. But you have built in these issues, challenges, and rumors. Issues, challenges, and rumors, especially with some sort of clock that progresses forward, are great for consistently generating new tasks, new events in solo games, right? Because again, when you're solo playing, you're creating all of the tide movement in this swimming pool, okay? So it's like if you played whirlpool in a swimming pool when you were a kid and just kept walking around and around and around, and then you'd stop and you'd be able to float along. But then at a certain point, you would slow down and your feet would touch, and then you'd have to whirlpool it around again, right? This is very much in solo play the same method. You will create you'll create a tide. That tide will carry you along, but at a certain point, you're going to need these anchor points to put your feet down and get the whirlpool going again. And so things like rumors, challenges, or issues are going to do that. So much so that if you are playing even a solo game that doesn't have those built into it, I would consider putting those in, because that's when the water stops. You could be like, all right, let's generate some movement inside this created world. A rumor is really great. Maybe that rumor is like, I'm not going to follow up on that. Challenges could be, if you're not playing a game that has like a settlement, a challenge can be one of the factions makes a move. One of your enemies shows up. Your debt is called in. And then these issues could be between you and NPCs. Something arises, right? And remember, the golden rule is that humans are endlessly stupid. And so you don't always have to like create a big justification for why someone starts having an issue. As we all know, some people just have issues all the time. Even when everything's fine, they have issues, right? And so these are going to create that tide movement. The last thing I think, which I would call sort of, I think it's a good thing to do at the beginning of every campaign, every session, and every time you get a little off track is, I want you to, in fact, I think, yeah, let me write this out because I think it is that important. Let's see if I can. Why do I try to do this stuff midstream? All right. All right, here we go. Not the success. Let me make it smaller. Thank you to all those who did not click away. That's going to be too small. That'll be a little too small. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, good enough. I am trying to do X, but right now I am doing Y. Almost always, there is going to be a way for you to fill in X and Y in this sentence, because if you cannot, then there is no tension. There is no conflict. There is no challenge. This is like the only time you can't, in your own life, the only time you can't fill in this sentence is these brief moments of when you are at peace. Maybe you've been saving up for that vacation all year long and you finally are on that raft and going, I've got my drink with some ridiculous name, right? It's called like, to my left, I have a kiss of an iguana with blueberries. I've got my shades on. I've got my feet crossed on my raft, and it's all good. I am trying to chill, but right now I am doing to chill. Okay, so it's very rare. And even then, let's get real. You're like, shouldn't have put this trip on a credit card, right? So if you need an anchor point, just think, I'm trying to do X. I'm trying to, and think as big as possible. I'm trying to rescue the prince. I'm trying to, ooh, that was, bet you didn't expect me to say that. Okay, I'm trying to rescue some money. I am trying to save this colony. I am trying to find this weapon, find this artifact. I'm trying to defeat this monster. But right now I'm doing Y. But right now I have to go recruit somebody. But right now I have to level up. But right now I have to go to these caves because I'm on a mission. Okay. That very simple anchoring sentence is going to orient you. It'll be your compass so that you go, okay, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know what I'm doing. And once I finish what I'm doing, I will continue doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That will anchor your sessions. Okay, I hope that was helpful. I know, maybe these are things you've already thought of. Maybe some things you do yourself. If you have any of those ideas, please put them down in the comments. I just want to take the last few minutes, which with me, I don't know, that could be a long time, to talk about some considerations I made while setting up my solo play for Walking Dead. Once again, my recommendation is, this is a good recommendation game if you are new to solo play, because I think it very clearly spells a lot of things out, puts your tools front and center, makes, there's still a good level of complexity, but I think it is going to, it sets a lot of things up in ways that are easier to knock down. I have a couple of gripes with it. I think sometimes the organization of the information is a little bit confusing. There's a lot of I'll mention this on page 20 and then it will actually happen on page 65. Some of the pacing or the sequencing, I guess you could say, of how stuff is mentioned is a little bit strange. Another thing that's a bit strange is sometimes there are, specifically with gear, there's gear mentioned that there is no listing for. So for instance, my character, Lyndon Hurst, I rolled a D6 3 times. I got a shotgun, a tent, and survival equipment. I was like, okay, I know what a shotgun and a tent is. And I really like that this game does not have too many options, right? Because sometimes you're playing a zombie survival game or any type of survival game that's based in this world. And obviously you have to suspend disbelief somewhat. But at a certain point, I'm like, do I really need, 3 days into the campaign or 3 sessions in, you're like, my character has a cold fusion ray gun. Huh? I don't even know if cold fusion could be put in a ray gun. I don't think it's even theoretically possible. Well, I think it's theoretically possible. I don't think it's actually possible. I don't need that. Right. I just need a couple of items. So this right now, what you're seeing me do right now is what we try to avoid by creating that listing of the screenshots of all of those different tables, which you're not going to be able to do every time. I understand sometimes you have the hardcover, but you can get creative. It's very easy to take a picture with a smartphone, crop it, and then whatever you could do to add to the collage. So these are close combat and ranged weapons, and I like that. There they are. And then this is gear. There's no survival gear is not listed. And if it is listed, maybe it is listed somewhere in the book. I've actually looked quite a bit. But maybe it's listed in a box or something, but it's that should be here. I should be able to look in the gear section and see that. Now, is it a huge problem for me as a solo player? No. I already figured out what I was going to do with that. Basically, the first 2 survival-related things I needed, I decided that those would be the 2 things. And it ended up being matches, or actually, matches didn't count. It was a compass and a ration. Those were the things I needed. So I was like, okay, I got that survival gear is 2 rations and a compass. But that's kind of just some basic stuff that, you just want to edit that. You want to make sure that it's easy for people to reference what you're doing. So all the more reason for this book to create some sort of quick reference thing. And by the way, you could get a GM screen. That's the point of a GM screen. I think Free League's GM screens are notoriously not optimized. I've only seen a very far away picture of the GM screen for Walking Dead. They usually don't show that because they know that people will just screenshot it. But it looks pretty okay. I think that no matter what, a GM screen takes up tons of room and very often does not have the stuff I need. So yeah, that's a little, I guess I think those are pretty much my gripes, like actual gripes of things that I think need some improvement. The other things are just like considerations for solo play. Okay, so here's the first thing I notice. I really obviously love Year Zero engine, and one of the things I'm so thankful for about Year Zero is it has a tendency to narrow the range of possibility in terms of damage. Because you're rolling 6 dice, you have a certain amount of successes, you don't want to roll 86 dice. As much as you'd like an RPG cannon to do 66 damage, do you really feel like doing those kind of like calculations in your head? No, and that's why the damage of every weapon in this game is either 1, 2, or 3. Some of them have this BP, which I think is, I forgot exactly what, it's blast radius. It's basically like anybody who rolls lower than the blast radius is like gets hit by the damage of that. And then some of them confer bonuses, like bonuses to your rolls. Some of them take up more or less slots in your inventory, your encumbrance, but I just love this. The damage is 1, 2, or 3. Why do I love this? Because there's no surprise weapons in RPG. When you're a GM, it's not like there's an advent calendar where you're like, I wonder what the strongest weapon is. Whoa, it's got a damage of 6. It's a gun that shoots clowns, and then the clowns have smaller clowns that come out of their mouth. We see it all. It's already all here, okay? And so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to not just like know what we have on the table, know what people can find, and know that it's going to be relatively within the same range and easy to calculate damage throughout the game. Does it lead to a little bit of maybe like drift? Sometimes I think it does, because you'll be like, okay, I can rifle butt someone for 1. I can also throw a throwing knife at them for 1. And I was like, yeah, right. And then you kind of think about it. You're like, I don't know, man. Like if someone rifle butted me in my skull versus throwing a knife in my arm, I don't know which of those I would prefer. You have a sledgehammer takes 3 damage, and a heavy machine gun does 3 damage. And again, I had that initial reaction of like, oh, come on, those should be totally different. But then that's actually video game brain, because again, if you think about it, you're like, getting shot with a machine gun's the same as a sledgehammer. Yeah. Like, do you know how big a sledgehammer is? Like, and someone swings that at the side of your face full speed. That's 3 damage. That's, maybe it's 2.5 compared to the 3 of a heavy machine gun. But again, I love this, but there's a little bit of a cascading issue this creates for the solo player. The issue is the damage is low because the health in this game is low. Okay? There are only 4 possible health statuses in this game. You either have 3 health, which means you are undamaged, unless you're totally damaged, twisted like Jared Leto's Joker. If you're at 3 health, you're unharmed. If you are at 2 health, you are bruised. At 3 health unharmed, 2 health bruised, 1 battered, 0 broken. Okay? If you are broken, then you can make no actions, and you could do quick actions. You could like yell out, or maybe if you're really close to cover, you can like roll into it. But you're essentially down, right? You are down until somebody is able to roll a med roll and stabilize you. At the point that you are stabilized, you still have a rolling penalty, okay, until you recover from it. Additionally, some of the injuries, the critical injuries, many actually, more critical injuries than not, have this time limit. All right. So, and I actually like this. Okay. So, for instance, let's take a deep flesh wound. All right. You roll a 33. It's a D66 crit injury table. Deep flesh wound. Is it lethal? Yes. What is the time limit? Meaning, how quickly do you need to be stabilized before you are dead? And what happens, and I do not like this, by the way, but this doesn't really matter for solo play, is it says the GM rolls this dice in secret. And if it says days, you roll D6, 6 days. And they say, oh, you're really dying. Because the reason I hate that, number one, I just don't like GM hidden rolls. But number two, as the player, I'm always going to assume it's 1 day. So I'm always going to make actions with the assumption that it's 1 day. Whereas if I can see the roll, and I know that's a bit meta or whatever, but I mean, you can kind of tell those things relatively. Like, I'll tell you, if I get an injury, I know if it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, and I know if it's a day versus a month. Anyways, you roll that, you get 6 days, and then it has a letter next to it, right? It's either A or B, and that means the type of medical equipment that is needed to stabilize this person with this, okay? And so, for instance, B is basic medical gear. It's like anything a field medic would have, scalpels, bandages, et cetera, et cetera. And when you have these injuries, you need someone to stabilize you with the medical roll. And if they have one of these lethal injuries, they need to do it with that type of equipment before the time runs out. Then, once that person's stabilized, they have a penalty. So, for instance, deep flesh wound would be a -2 on all rolls until they recover. And for recovery, deep flesh wound says days. They would then have to recover for 6 days. My understanding, or at least the way I want to understand this, is then you can have somebody work on it medically again, and that can reduce the amount of days of recovery. But until you do that, you roll with that penalty. Now, even if you didn't understand or you didn't follow all of that, let's just kind of recap this as a solo player. I'm in combat. I'm downed. I'm broken. Okay. I have to be stabilized. So if I have an NPC companion, my NPC companion can do that. Problem. A stabilization requires a successful medical roll. My NPC companion, if they're not expert in medicine, in which they would add 4 dice to their roll, they roll 1 extra dice. So if their basic attribute is 2, they roll 3. And if they don't hit a 6, then you have to wait. You have to roll again 2 minutes to attempt to stabilize again, or 2 turns, or whatever it would be. In that process, they're still engaged in combat in a game in which you are being often surrounded by undead, flesh-munching ghouls. That's if you have an NPC companion. If you don't have an NPC companion, you have no options. So right away I know, solo play, I have to, add some sort of modification that would allow me to, like in Dragonbane, rally myself if I'm injured. Okay, I can swallow that I have to make a my own rally roll. I have to roll a medical 6 roll, or else I'm open to attack. And here's the thing: if you're broken and you're injured again, you're dead. You're gone. Okay. Now in group play, this works because, first of all, this game is fundamentally different in how it deals with like POV. Your characters die a lot, and so you just kind of switch POV to another NPC. It is so casual about switching POV that they even recommend that, like, when your character's recovering from an injury, that you just switch into an NPC. Okay. So right away I need to rally myself. And number two, the thing that I start thinking about is, does this system of HP work? I really like it. I like games that are deadly. I like games that you have to consider other things. This even says, you know, this is not a lot of, like, it's be very easy. So you need to, it would be very easy to die. And so you really need to consider running away as often as possible. And I 100% hear that, because that is real life. But one problem is I don't want to run away from every single combat. Like, I'm playing a role-playing game where I have like Uzis and stuff. I understand that this game has higher stakes and that I should run, or I should hide, or I should whatever. But sometimes I do want to fight. Like, sometimes I do want to enjoy that mechanic. And so a couple of options. I could jack this up to a regular HP and say I'm at 8 and I only enter into unharmed, or maybe 6, right? And only when I'm down to 2 am I bruised, then battered, then broken. That feels a little bit weird to me. That feels like a fundamental violation. Or I could take a look at armor. Okay, and now armor, also kind of interesting in this game, is that armor provides protection of either 4, 6, or 8. Now, if you think about that, you're like, huh? Because I thought, everything is only 1, 2, or 3. Well, you have to consider that if they do more success rolls, they can hit you for like additional HP damage. And I am a little bit, I would say, I think there could have been a little bit better way that they handled armor. But essentially armor, you roll that many dice after you're hit, and that is how many points it blocks. Okay, that's the easiest way to think about it. So if somebody hits me with a sledgehammer for 3, and they succeed on that hit, don't even worry about like extra rolls getting extra. And I have a soft vest on, okay, which gives me 4 dice. I would roll 4 dice, and I would take every success, I would -1. So they hit me for 3, I would subtract 1, I'm hit for 2. But just think about that for a second. Say that's like the first moment in combat. I get hit with a sledgehammer, and I go from unharmed to what? Battered? One more hit, I'm broken. I'm on the ground. So I don't fully get how this is going to play out in solo play. And I have to be honest, even very, very good players have fudged it a bit. Or, have gotten creative, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I fudge the hell out of things. Yeah, soft vest, you get 4 dice you roll for blocks. Every success is a block. Body armor 6, metal plated armor is 8, but they also reduce your mobility by -3, -2, -1, respectively. One thing I think I would do is definitely start my game with at least a soft vest. My character didn't even I don't even think any of the characters, maybe one of them has that as an option, and unfortunately, again, it's riot gear for the police officer, which is not even listed here. It does say it's level 6, so I assume, okay, that's body armor. I don't know why they wouldn't just say body armor, whatever. So I think I definitely have to start with soft vest. I definitely have to have a means to rally myself. And then in terms of attributes, in solo mode in this game, instead of 12 points, you get 14. That's great. That's how it should be. But then also, you get a second free talent. And the ones they recommend are Lone Wolf, 9 Lives, and Unbreakable. And talents-wise, let's go to the listing. Oh, I was on it. So for the farmer, you start off with one of your talents, and each of them has this thing in italics that says like, that kind of gives you a little bit of flavor based on the talent, because it means that like, because you have this talent, The reason you have this talent is because of something you did or experienced in the past. So like tracker for farmer, gain +2 on survival when you either track someone or try to hide your own tracks. Italics, you track someone or something, in your life so that you can kind of fill in that story and say, here's a little bit more about me. Another one is tough as nails. Gain +2 to endure when you starve or work hard. You had to push yourself beyond your limits. And living off the land, gain +2 to tech when you work on projects that increase capacity for your haven. Havens in this game have both capacity and defense, which I'm very proud of myself. If you're a long time watcher of the channel, you remember like one of my first games that I tried to make was called They Will Destroy You, and it had a settlement mechanic that had something, I think it might have been capacity and defense. So I came up with that on my own, and luckily I never published it and got in some copyright war over it. So the ones they say to consider then are, 2 of them are general talents. Okay, these are talents that anyone can pick up as they level up. You could pick up any of these as you level up. There just has to be a reason for it narratively. Unbreakable. Once per session, when you take the 3rd point of damage and become broken, you immediately stop being broken and regain 1 health point as if someone had given you first aid. You still take the critical injury. Okay, that's good. I'm concerned that I still take the critical injury, and the critical injury is like a real problem. However, this unbreakable, at the very least, it basically like gives me auto first aid. So that kind of covers what I was talking about of being able to give myself first aid, but this is once per session. But so far, okay, 9 lives. When rolling for a critical injury, you may decide which of the dice represents the 10s and which represents the 1s. You should have died, but you didn't. This is, to me, a very stingy talent. And I noticed this in some, it's not just Free League, it's many games. It's like people that kind of go out of their way to be stingy with a talent that they could be more generous with. Why does it have to be once per session? Why does it have to be that I decide on the 10s and the 1s? Why can't I just decide which one it is? And I'll tell you, I really would prefer that kind of control, because the critical injuries in this game are devastating. They're absolutely devastating. This is so weird. I've been doing this nonstop of like looking something up and then immediately forgetting the number. Maybe it's because I'm trying to talk and do this at the same time. All right. Critical injuries are on page 68 and 69. Okay. So let me just, without even like showing you, this is a D66. From 11 to 26 is non-lethal. All of this is lethal, and these ones, instant death. So if I roll a 66 or a 55, it's just worthless. It's that is a worthless skill. So maybe it should be something like you can subtract, once per session, you could subtract 11 from, your roll or whatever on this. But even so, both of these right now, so with the unbreakable, I get a quick recovery, but I still have this crit injury. So if I roll a spinal injury, it's like, great. I have 1 HP. I have this spinal injury. I can't walk. And I'm out. I'm alone. Okay. That could lead me into some trouble. And I know what some of you who have played this game are already thinking, which is, oh, you should have a lot of NPCs. You should have stuff in your haven. You should be going out in groups. Absolutely. But that also leads to a little bit of another issue, which I'll talk about in just a second after we read the last talent that is being offered here. The last talents, we had Unbreakable, we had 9 lives, and the last one they recommend is something from one of the, I think it's the Outcasts. Lone Wolf. You can have yourself as one of your 2 anchors. You were betrayed by someone you trusted. So the anchor system is kind of cool. At the end of a session, you have to, it's called something like challenge your fear. I see no reason why it should be named anything other than face your fear. But you face your fear by like seeing if you have 5 or more stress, if you witness someone die, if you had to hurt somebody that was kind of innocent, all these things. And you roll a certain amount of dice. I forgot which one it is, but you roll, I think, 2 attributes. It might be like wits and empathy. And then you can add +2 to that roll, +2 dice for every anchor that you have who is like still alive and part of your life. And so assigning yourself as an anchor means that you can always add a +2 as long as you are alive, which if you're not, you're probably done playing. But okay. So that's pretty cool, except, that happens at the end of the session. If you lose that roll, the implications are quite severe. Okay. You can start like talking to people. You can have like serious, okay. So you can get overwhelmed. You can lose your drive, which you can once per session use your drive to like add 2 to your dice roll that your drive is related to. You can become shattered, which means you talk to dead people, see them, think the walkers are alive, protects a walker, wants to die, emotionally shuts off, involuntary rage, paranoid, obsessive, compulsive. Or your issues change. So these issues you've rolled up, you gain another issue. Okay, so here's the last thing I'll say before I talk about the NPC thing. I think that the 2 from Dragonbane would probably be better here. I do think that I suppose we lose a little bit of fidelity when we do that. But the 2 that we get is Army of 1, which is when fighting alone, draw 2 initiative cards. You have 2 turns each round. And then Soul Survivor, when adventuring alone, you may push a roll without suffering a condition. Or in Walking Dead, when you push, you get stress dice. And when you get 5 of them, you can reach what's called a breaking point, when you're trying to handle your fear. That's what they call it. So I think both of those are good. I think the reason they didn't go this way, and I don't know if it was intentional, it's not like the same, different people worked on the solo sections, but I suppose if I was like a seasoned warrior or mage, it's more plausible that I'm such a good fighter that I have, 2 initiatives. I'm able to attack twice when everyone else attacks once. And so, yeah, for let me just take this off. For this guy, that might make sense. The scientist, probably not. The politician, I don't think so. The preacher, the nobody, the outcast, maybe. The homemaker, maybe. And so that might break the reality of it a little bit. I guess the other thing, too, is this focus on having an NPC companion that is one of your anchors. And then also building this haven. And at the beginning of the game, you really should have generated names of several people in your haven. And this is the last thing, I guess, like if we're looking at all these pieces as domino pieces that are coming together, this is something that I, as a solo player, would want to consider a different way of doing this. Is the solution for almost everything I've talked about with health, armor, critical injuries, all this stuff, is creating a robust list of NPCs. NPCs in this game are either trained, expert, or master. And that just determines how many dice they roll for different skills. And they can also be like trained in one and then an expert in, trained in everything, but an expert in 2 things or whatever. But you're not supposed to build them all the way out. But you're supposed to have them on deck so that you can sort of switch POV when your character is injured or whatever. As a solo player, I don't know if I like that. In a sense, there could be an appeal to that, in that I get to experience multiple different perspectives. But I do also feel that that is a lot of stuff, a lot of development on the front end. And whereas I don't, I think I have different values around character creation than, like, say, Geek Gamers does. But I really think that if I'm generating a main protagonist for myself, an NPC who is like one of my anchors who's a companion, and then several other NPCs in the commune, even if I'm just coming up with names and I'm coming up with a little bit of issues and stuff, I find this to be an over-generation of ideas that will make me feel boxed in, and it leads to the type of mind rubble that I think scares some people off from solo games, which is like, gosh, I have to manage all of these things. I got to think about how this person reacts, or like, I don't want to break the reality of this relationship. What if one of these people are, I used to be married to them, and so like I can't really explore that or anything. I would rather meet these people or just have like a few drawn up. But the problem then becomes, if I don't have these people on deck, when my character's dead, they're dead. And also, if I know that my character is just going to get wasted and I'm going to have to switch to somebody else, emotionally, that might alter my investment. I'm curious if it would do the same to you. Maybe I'm wrong on this. When I did play through just on my own a bit, my character did not die. I had a very successful combat. So this leads me to the other adjustment that I might make for Walking Dead Solo, which is to either keep the health, give myself some soft armor, soft vest, keep the health as it is, keep the damage as it is, start with a soft vest, and then either radically elevate the threshold of what it takes to kill my survivor, or eliminate that completely and just say, like, they get injured, and while they're injured, maybe then I can pick up the story of some of these other NPCs, and I might be able to fill in a little more about them through those little brief POVs, but ultimately I'm anchored back to this person when they recover. I don't want to let go of this, I know it happens. I'm playing in a session right now where somebody had this awesome character that they're gone, right? And free league games, year zero games are deadly. But it's just that, people talk about these stories where it's like, yeah, I spent 2 hours rolling up a character, and then on the first combat, I died. And my reaction to that is like, why did your GM let that happen? Like, you couldn't hand wave that? This person like created a character for you. And when I'm solo playing, I think about this person. I inhabit this because it's necessary for me to do that in order to like really have a fluid, immersive, powerful, powerful sort of session. But what do I know? I don't know. All I know is this. The threat meter is one of the most fun things I've ever bought in any RPG. And it's like, if you're a SoloRPG nerd, you want to get this because it's more than a threat level. It's also a fidget spinner. It was really cool if I was able to keep it on here. But as it is, I guess the ending of this video is just going to have to be, you guessed it, sad.